There you are.
Hi again. I'm Linda Deir. It's great to see you guys on Saturdays at 1 p.m. Pacific time. I read from Guided on Saturdays at 1 p.m. Pacific time, so you always know I'll be here, okay? Except for the last Saturday of the month, and that's when we do our webinar where the light beings talk to you about the uncertain world that you're now living in and how to navigate that, okay? All right. Speaking of our webinar, that's where we were last week. Last Saturday, July 25th of 2020 at 1 p.m. For those who signed up for the webinar was preparing you for your new experiences from the light beings. And you can find that webinar, if you want to get the replay, on my website, lindadeir.com. Just look for live events and you'll see it there. All right. Okay, so 2 Saturdays ago, I read to you from chapter 13 of my true life story, Guided. Her spirit guide angels were her best friends and life coaches. I read about everyone's reaction to change. It turned out that my achievements made Alex feel inadequate. He always told me that he was envious of my high energy. It turned out that he was serious about that. And his solution to getting more energy was to take cocaine. While I was going through the divorce, my mother told me how I had made my dad feel inadequate. I was shocked to hear that. Dad was my hero. Why would he ever feel that way? According to Mom and just about everyone else, I made everything look easy. She said I made more money in 1 year than Dad had in his best 5. All this was just an echo for me, hearing this time and time again in one form or another. How did I do all this on my own? I didn't. I had help along the way. I knew I was being guided. I had fun doing it. I was successful at doing it. And that is what made it look so easy. Today, I will be reading to you from chapter 14 of Guided, Dreading the Personal Relationship Arena. In a moment of clarity, I realized that I had been busying my life back up again with this subdivision, buying the townhouse, and being in the planning stages of designing the Lake Tahoe house that I hoped to start building soon. Working all the time had been protecting me from looking at personal relationships. Being friends with Mary was about all I could stand. My guides had made it clear that I needed to tend to my personal life skills. I could feel I was losing my way again, but I just couldn't stop it. That's how much I dreaded the thought of venturing into the personal relationship arena. So, sit back, relax, as I tell the story about how, despite the dysfunction, my spirit guides took me on one journey after another that led me to a greater understanding of myself. Guided, you can find it on Amazon in paperback, Kindle, or audiobook format. And I read the book. Okay, so you can find it there. And by the way, Guided won the International Body, Mind, Spirit Book Award in 2017, just a couple years after it came out. So it's a powerful book. Okay. Here I go. Chapter 14, Dreading the Personal Relationship Arena. Everyone was struggling to adjust to the real estate correction that was in progress. The entire economy was contracting and reacting to all kinds of other manipulations. The savings and loan scandals, precious metals manipulations, rising oil prices, and a change of presidents from Democrat to a Republican. Everything was flip-flopping. In early 1981, my subdivision in Carmichael was about 6 months from completion. For about 6 months, Mary's teenage son, Mark, had been spending quite a lot of time around my subdivision. He was kind of lost, so I let him hang around at work and at home when he wanted to. I was focused on finishing up my duplexes, coming home to my new townhouse I had just bought in Fair Oaks. It was a very nice place that I had upgraded quite a bit. Being so busy, I hadn't had much time to hang out with Mary. She was also engaged in expanding her businesses. Mark showed up every day after school and just hung around. I thought nothing of it and went about my own business. Meanwhile, in a moment of clarity, I realized that I had been busying my life back up again with the subdivision, buying the townhouse, and being in the planning stages of designing the Lake Tahoe house that I hoped to start building soon. Working all the time had protected me from looking at the personal relationships. Being friends with Mary was about all I could stand. But now I sensed that I was getting off track and received the intuitive message from my guides following the cruise in 1979. They had made it clear that I needed to tend to my personal life skills. I could feel I was losing my way again, but I just couldn't stop it. That was how much I dreaded the thought of venturing into the personal relationship arena. The only difference this time versus the past was that this time I was aware I was immersing myself into my work to avoid personal relationships. The unsettled feeling was my guides letting me know that I was making poor decisions. When I didn't course correct, they gave me a nudge. Awareness. Sometimes what you need to overcome is so difficult that it takes tons of persistence by you and all the help you can conjure up, like from your guides. I didn't want to finish the Carmichael project without having something lined up to do next. So while the economy was still in a terrible recession, I was hoping I would be granted the sewer permit to start construction of the Tahoe house. To my surprise, on my birthday in August of 1981, I was awarded the sewer permit. I thought that was an interesting birthday present. It was a sign of things to come, something I could not see coming yet. To beat the winter snows, I had to get all the permits, the bids, and the grading handled, along with the foundation and framing done by November. Then I surmised I could have the subcontractors do the inside work during the winter months. The project in Carmichael was coming to a profitable close for me, so I was feeling satisfied, but continued to feel unsettled inside. It was strange, almost like vertigo, and I didn't know what it was. Of course, it was another nudge from my most trusted advisors, my guides. Awareness. This is what it feels like when you aren't listening and start going off track. Your guides are an energy force that walks alongside you on your path. If you go off course, you have to go out of your way to get around them, and everything becomes more difficult. This is them nudging you to do a course correction. Mark continued to hang around after school, so I gave him some work to do on the job site to keep him busy and help him make some money. When I did things like make dinner, go shopping, run errands, He would tag along. We would watch movies at home, and sometimes he would fall asleep on the living room couch, although he would be gone to school by morning. He was a sweet boy looking for direction in his life. He had friends and was a wrestler. I let him drive my truck so he could get around. Mary had gone back with her ex-husband, whom she had divorced a couple years earlier. She and I spoke occasionally about Mark because he had become distant from them. He was confused about his mom and dad's on again, off again relationship. Being focused on her work, Mary was not particularly interested in friendships, and I had no time for the social life either. And once she went back to her husband, there was a parting of the ways between us. I didn't know why, but I respected her decision. Over the couple of years that Mary and I had been close friends, and even before that, when we were neighbors, Mark had seen me around. What I didn't know is what Mary would tell me later. That back then he was telling his best friend that he would marry me one day. I was totally clueless. He was just my best friend's son. I pretty much left him to himself to find his way, and that was all there was in it for me, as far as I was concerned. Even when he became very protective of me, I didn't see the signals. But when he started getting into fights with his friends, confronting him about spending time with me, I realized this had grown into something much more than a friendship for him. One day he told me he loved me, and he really meant it. This caught me completely off guard. Looking back, I know that it took something like this to reach me. I was really closed down and clueless about the signs of a relationship. Regardless, he was way too young for me, for me to let our relationship be more than a friendship. And I was very clear about that with him on that point. It was only later that I would discover that he was inserted into my life by a divine force, a big one. In spite of my decision to dig myself deeper into my work to avoid developing my social and personal life skills, the plot was building, all designed by my guides. Tip: life is like a movie. There's the plot, the setup along the way, the reflections and looking back, the good and the bad decisions, lots of oh my gods, and several oh shits. You are one of the actors in the script and don't know what other people's roles are in your life. Many times they just show up. Your guides are the writers, producers, and directors. This is another reason it's vital to build a relationship with your guides because they see it all. I did manage to have the outside work completed at the Tahoe house before winter set in. Even so, it was a struggle to get any inside work done during the fall and winter months. The snowstorms that season in Lake Tahoe were the worst since the Native Americans had inhabited the land. There couldn't have been a worse time to have a building under construction than during that winter. The house next door collapsed. The people died right inside their homes as the roofs caved in on them from the weight of the snow. The Alpine Meadows ski resort was badly damaged, and massive avalanches killed many skiers. All the roads were closed for most of the winter. I had 30 feet of snow around my house. It was scary, and I was beginning to wonder what I had gotten myself into. The house I was building was one of the few that were not damaged from the relentless winter snowstorms because I had proper snow removal done, so my roof was not under too much stress. There were days at a time that I could not get out unless I skied out. At one point, I crawled through the snow to a neighbor's house and asked them for some supplies to get me by until the storm passed. Believe it or not, they refused. Based on that, I considered selling it as soon as I was finished building it. Awareness. This would turn out to be prophetic, but not for any reason I could imagine yet. Mark would come up to the Tahoe house with me occasionally, sometimes to work and sometimes just to hang out. In the summer months, he would always go fishing. I managed to get the place finished, but it was by far the hardest project I ever built. It went far over budget and was a struggle all the way through. I felt lost and lonely up there, where I knew no one, and the values and way of life of the locals were so different from mine. Despite the strangeness of it all, once I was finished, I actually started moving into the Tahoe house. It was the summer of 1982. I don't know why I decided to do that, because I was running low on funds. I decided to sell the townhouse I had in Fair Oaks, so I moved into a rental in Carmichael for the transition. Mark continued to tell me he wanted to marry me. I told him he was too young and to stop bringing it up. If I had any awareness of social dynamics, I would have told him he needed to stop coming around. But I still just saw him as a young neighborhood kid that I didn't see any real problem with it. He was disappointed, but persisted. I found out later that he had gone to his mom and asked for money so he could buy me a ring. By June of 1982, he was telling me that he was going to be there when I turned 30 years old in 2 months from now. I didn't understand why this was so important to him, because I had never said anything about it. My 30th birthday was like some kind of milestone for him. It was a non-event for me. In the summer of 1982, I felt adrift without a compass because I had no other projects lined up and I wasn't even looking for any. I was just completing the Tahoe house and moving things up there with each trip from Carmichael. I was tight on cash and the recession was still relentlessly underway. Not having projects lined up was not on my mind because the Tahoe house was such an exhausting experience. I was out of gas. It was like I was on hold or in some kind of limbo. Awareness. Doing things that make no sense doesn't always mean that you are not paying attention. In this case, I was being moved through the motions like a pawn in a chess game without knowing it. I just didn't feel like myself, but I was about to find out why. This week, the week of my birthday, I had a terrible feeling Mark was going to get into a car accident. I saw it coming and coming soon. When I brought it up and begged him to be extra careful driving, he just responded that he would be there for me on my 30th birthday. It sounded like a promise he had to fulfill. It was now getting creepy to hear him say it. Each day as my birthday approached, my dread increased. My birthday came and went, and nothing happened. It felt like I had been holding my breath. But even as my birthday passed, the feeling persisted. I had another trip to the Tahoe house planned for August 18th. And for no apparent reason, on the evening of August 17th, I made a huge Thanksgiving dinner with turkey, and all the trimmings. I didn't think about it at the time. I just made it like I was on automatic. Mark arrived late for dinner. When I asked him where he had been, he said he was returning stuff he had accumulated over the years, like keys and other odds and ends he had been given. It seemed a little odd, but I didn't give it a second thought. Then he proceeded to tell me not to trust his cousin, Karen. He was adamant about it, and made me promise to never trust her. I didn't understand why he was so concerned. I promised, and once again, told him to be very careful driving as fast as he did. The next morning, I hopped into the car to go to Tahoe. Mark decided to come along so he took the truck. I wanted Cindy to be with me, but she insisted on riding with Mark. On the way out of town, we stopped at a donut shop to get something quick to eat. As we munched our breakfast, Mark announced that he had a plan to get me a ring. He was very sincere about it. I repeated that wasn't going to happen and that we both needed to find people our own age. Mark just shook his head. We left the shop. He jumped in the truck with Cindy and pulled out in front of me. All of a sudden, for no apparent reason, I became preoccupied with business strategies going forward. It was consuming me. In hindsight, I come to realize that I was deliberately being preoccupied by the divine force. Something was coming that I was not supposed to interfere in. Awareness. There are times we are not meant to see the signs along the way. Something bigger is in play. As you look back, you may ask yourself, why didn't I do things differently when I knew and felt what I did? The answer is that you were stunned with the divine force to keep you from interfering with a plan that was bigger than you. Guilt has no place here. In fact, at this point, it's petty. Let all of this thinking go and respect this powerful force that's bigger than any of us. Next Saturday, August 18th at 1 p.m. Pacific time, I will read to you from chapter 15 of Guided, The Shock That Changed Everything. All the way up to the Tahoe house, I was crunching numbers in my mind. Like a switch had gone off, I had now become obsessed with what I was going to do once the Tahoe house was done. I had to stop along the way to keep some business appointments, which put me about 30 minutes behind Mark and Cindy. Once I was back on the road, everything was fine for a while. Then, about 10 minutes before my turnoff, I was overcome with the terrible feeling. In an instant, I knew Mark and Cindy had been in a car accident. It was crystal clear. I shifted out of planning mode and into survival mode as both my arms went limp. And it took everything I had, physically, emotionally, and mentally, to keep driving. Until then. What is that, Ray?
Next week.
Oh, didn't I say that?
So the 18th. The 8th.
The 8th. I meant Mark. I'll be reading from Guided next week, August 8th. I didn't mean to say the 18th. Ray caught me on that. Thank you, Ray.
Yeah.
So until then, you have help. You are never alone and always being guided.